Yo, Gentleman's Game back. This is the second episode in my new series on Robert Greene's book, The Art of Seduction. If you haven't checked out the first episode yet, which kinda goes over the general theory of seduction and how it was developed throughout history into what it is today, check that out right here. This episode is gonna go over the first two types of seducers that Robert Greene introduces in his book, the Siren and the Rake. The Siren is a female type of seducer, whereas the Rake is a male one. These two are the only seducers of the 9 that are gender specific, but what we'll see is that both these types of seducers are good at using their voice in order to attract people, which is the theme of today's video. So first, I'm gonna go into the female Siren seducer, then the Rake, then finally a great tip on how to more effectively use your voice as a tool of seduction. But first, do me a favor and give this video a like. It'll show me that this series is a good idea to continue. Alright, so the Siren. If you were forced to read the Odyssey in high school like I was, you might be familiar with the Siren. In Greek mythology, they are portrayed as these creatures that lured sailors in with their enchanting voice. Sirens are a type of seducer that's pretty specific to women. These are women who have an abundance of sexual energy and know how to use it to their advantage. You see, most of us guys can get pretty bored with a girl, no matter how beautiful she is, after some time. Guys yearn for variety, both for pleasure and adventure. So, Sirens understand this, and that all she needs to do to keep a man vexed is to create the illusion that she offers this kind of variety and adventure. Girls who are Sirens represent every guy's fantasy, a very sexual and confident, offering endless pleasure and a bit of danger. A perfect example of a Siren is Queen Cleopatra of Egypt. Robert Greene paints a story of the first time that Caesar met Cleopatra. A Greek merchant tells Caesar that he has a gift for him. Caesar's curious, so he lets him in. The merchant brings in a giant rolled up carpet, undoes the rope around the bundle, and unfolds the carpet. And inside is a half-clothed 21-year-old Cleopatra rising from the carpet like the goddess Venus. Greene writes, "Everyone was dazzled at the sight of the beautiful young woman appearing before them suddenly, as if in a dream. They were astounded at her daring and theatricity. She was in the prime of her life, with a delightful voice which could not fail to cast a spell over all those who heard it. Caesar was spellbound as soon as he set eyes on her and she opened her mouth to speak. That same night, Cleopatra became Caesar's lover." Now, Caesar was used to having mistresses trying anything to keep him under their spell, but he would always end up ditching them for what really interested him: politics, conquest, and theater. But nothing prepared him for Cleopatra. She would put on all these grand spectacles for him that would just blow him away, like dressing up as the goddess Isis surrounded by the riches of her court, or taking him on a lavish expedition along the Nile. And the truth is, according to historical descriptions of her, Cleopatra wasn't that special in terms of her looks. In fact, there were other girls more prettier than her, but it was her ability to distract the man that worked so well. She would be transforming her appearance on a day-to-day basis, a one-woman spectacle. And of course, her voice was absolutely legendary. Ancient writers described her voice as so intoxicating that even if her words were boring, she'd say them so sweetly that listeners would find themselves remembering not what she said, but how she said it. Cleopatra provided constant variety. Tributes, mock battles, expeditions, everything had a bit of drama and was done with lots of energy. From her, we learned that it's not beauty that makes a Siren, but rather a theatrical streak that allows her to embody a man's fantasies. Also, we can take away that Sirens never speak quickly or aggressively. Their voice is always calm, soothing, and unhurried, as if she had never quite woken up or left her bed. So, the second type of seducer is the Rake. This describes the guy who's pretty unashamed about how obsessed he is with women. The Rake understands that all women want to be desired. They want to feel beautiful and sexy, and the Rake goes out of his way to indulge them in this pleasure. Just like the Siren is good at distracting men with her physical appearance, the Rake is good at distracting women with his intense desire. Greene writes, "A woman is often defensive and can sense insincerity, but if she feels consumed by your attentions and is confident you'll do anything for her, she'll notice nothing else about you, or will find a way to give your indiscretions. This is the perfect cover for a seducer. The key is to show no hesitation, to abandon all restraint, to let yourself go." A good historical example of the Rake that Robert refers to is Gabriel D'Annunzio. In the early 1880s, he was just a young journalist trying to enter high Roman society. He had no money, no connections, and the Italian royalty even thought he was downright ugly, short with a dark splotchy complexion and bulging eyes. So much so in fact that they gladly let him mingle with their wives and daughters, certain that their girls would be safe from this ugly looking gargoyle. Turned out to be a big mistake. The second he was alone with these duchesses, his manner would all of a sudden change. Within minutes, these girls would be spellbound. He was described as having the most magnificent voice they had ever heard. Soft and low, each syllable articulated, with a flowing rhythm and inflection that was almost musical. One woman compared it to the ringing of church bells in the distance. Others said his voice had a hypnotic effect. You see, even though Gabriel wasn't exactly a handsome guy, he knew how to effectively use his language to seduce a woman. He knows that a girl's weakness is to language and words. That's why Gabriel would use this super vibrant way of speaking. He'd use alliteration and poetic images when offering praise to a girl's beauty, which melted the heart of almost any woman he tried it on. He had mastered the art of flattery. He'd call one girl a goddess of nature, another one an incomparable artist in the making, another one a romantic figure straight out of a novel, and each of these girls' heart would flutter as he'd describe in detail the effect she had on him. Everything was flirty, suggesting at sex or romance. These duchesses would go to sleep at night pondering his words, not really what he specifically said, but more so the feeling it had given her. Then the next day she'd receive a poem from him that seemed to be written specifically for her, even though the truth was he had dozens of these poems and just changed them around slightly. He seduced many women in high society royalty, such as dancer Isadora Duncan, who remarked, "Perhaps the most remarkable lover of our time is Gabriel D'Annunzio, and notwithstanding that he is small, bald, and except when his face lights up with enthusiasm, ugly. But when he speaks to a woman he likes, his face is transfigured, so that he suddenly becomes Apollo. His effect on women is remarkable. The lady he is talking to suddenly feels that her very soul and being are lifted." Another one of his lovers, French actress Simone, commented, "How can one explain his conquest except by his extraordinary verbal power and the musical timbre of his voice, put to the service of exceptional eloquence? For girls like me are susceptible to words, bewitched by them, longing to be dominated by them." And that describes the essence of the Rake. A type of person who uses language very effectively by almost being a bit vague. The Rake chooses words for their abilities to suggest, insinuate, hypnotize, elevate things. It's like the male equivalent to the Siren, a powerful distraction on the senses. The reason the Rake's use of language is so effective in seducing others is because it's not necessarily used to communicate information, more so to persuade, flatter, and stir emotional turmoil. So if you want to channel your inner Rake, understand that when you're talking to a girl, the less they focus on what you say and more on how you make them feel, the more seductive you'll come across. Because despite what you think, girls aren't all tender creatures that some people think they are. Just like guys, they're attracted to the forbidden, the dangerous, even the slightly evil. In fact, a lot of girls actually feel oppressed by the role that society expects her to play. The nurturing, caring force that looks for commitment and lifelong royalty. They yearn for something exciting. And that's exactly what the Rake offers, an affair with pleasure for its own sake, and a bit of danger. So those are the first two types of seducers, the Siren and the Rake. And now that you know just how much of an effect your voice or words can have on seducing someone, here's my favorite tip I like to use to improve one's voice, and it is, drumroll please, yawning. Sounds a bit weird at first, right? Well, let me explain. You see, when a lot of guys talk to a cute girl, they'll get a bit nervous, and when that happens, they tend to speak from their throat. They'll say something like, "Hey, nice to meet you." That definitely isn't the best way to make a good first impression. What you want to do instead is to speak from your diaphragm, at a bit of a lower, grounded pitch. Something more like, "Hey, nice to meet you." It's a subtle change, but it makes a huge difference in the power that your words have. The trick is to emphasize those lower tones, those sounds. And a good way to practice this is to yawn. Do it slow towards the end so you really get into those lower tones and practice those vocal muscles. I know it sounds stupid, but I recommend doing it 5 times a day to train the parts of your vocal cord and diaphragm that help speaking in this lower, more seductive way. Once you learn to do this over the course of a few weeks, you'll be able to speak more slowly, more relaxed, with those lower tones that help you tap into your inner Rake, to use language as a means to seduce anyone. So, to summarize, today we learned the first 2 types of seducers in Robert Greene's book, The Art of Seduction, the female Siren and the male Rake. We learned that a big commonality between these two is the use of the voice in order to seduce others. And a tip to make your voice more attractive to others is to increase the range of your voice by yawning, especially emphasizing on those lower tones. So that's it for the video. Quick announcement, I finally made an Instagram to all of you who have been bothering me to make one, so go ahead and follow me there. My account name is right here. I literally have 0 followers over there right now, and I'm trying to break 1,000 within the next month, so please help me out. And as always, feel free to check out my free PDF on the fundamentals of attraction, which you can also find in the description below. And next week I have a special video planned, so make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, peace.